Picture this. You are sitting in a massive, overly air-conditioned lecture hall. The professor is handing out the final exam, and you can literally hear the crinkle of the paper moving down the rows right toward you.
Oh man, I can feel the anxiety just hearing you say that.
Right. Or maybe you are sitting in your bedroom just staring at your laptop screen. You are like 3 minutes away from logging into a high-stakes Zoom interview for that first major job.
The clock is just ticking down.
Exactly. 2 minutes. 1 minute. And suddenly your chest tightens up, your breathing gets shallow, your mind starts racing at 100 miles an hour, and that familiar cold wave of panic completely washes over you. We have all been there.
We really have. It's universal.
But what if the conventional advice to, just take a deep breath and do your best is actually completely backward? Today we're taking a deep dive into the audiobook, Train Your Mind to Win in Every Situation. And it basically argues that we are fundamentally misunderstanding what panic actually is, and more importantly, how to control it.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is how it completely reframes those high-pressure moments. It argues that life doesn't actually test your intelligence first, it tests your composure.
Which makes sense, but we don't really train for that, do we?
No, not at all. I mean, we spend years in school training our intelligence, right? Memorizing facts, learning technical skills. But we spend basically zero time training our composure. We tend to view calmness under pressure as this fixed personality trait, like you either have it or you don't.
Like you're either a naturally chill person or you're just an anxious person by default.
Exactly. But this audiobook insists that composure is not a trait at all. It is a highly trainable biological and psychological skill.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because whether you are a college student fighting immense academic pressure or a young professional dealing with the frankly terrifying social anxiety of entering the workforce, the goal isn't just to blindly survive the exam or the interview.
Right, just surviving isn't the point.
The goal is to train your mind to actually stay in the driver's seat. And the source starts this training with a pretty harsh reality check about how we approach our daily tasks. It says the biggest mistake young adults make is relying on motivation to get things done.
Yeah, the first rule of this mental training is that you have to win the inner game before you can win the outer game. And that inner game is heavily dependent on how you actually process your own feelings.
So how do most people process them, according to the text?
Well, most people wake up, they mentally check in with themselves, and they ask, how do I feel today? And whatever the answer is, that completely dictates what they are going to do. But the source makes a profound distinction here. It says feelings are information, not instructions.
Information on instructions.
Yeah.
I want to dig into the mechanism of that. Because why does the human brain so easily confuse those two things? Like, why do we feel a wave of anxiety about studying for a midterm and immediately interpret that feeling as an instruction to, I don't know, go watch 4 hours of YouTube?
It really comes down to evolutionary shortcuts. I mean, your brain is wired for immediate survival, not for your long-term academic or career goals.
So they're just trying to keep us safe right now.
Exactly. When you feel anxiety or discomfort, your amygdala, which is the brain's threat detector, flags that as immediate danger. And the easiest way to eliminate that danger is to avoid whatever task is causing it.
Wow, so it's a false alarm.
Yes. Your brain interprets that feeling of discomfort as a strict instruction to retreat. But when feelings become instructions, your behavior becomes completely erratic.
Because your feelings are always changing.
Right. Discipline isn't about punishing yourself. It is simply about following a standard, regardless of your emotional weather. You decide in advance who you are and how you act, and you execute on that.
That actually reminds me of the relationship between a ship's sails and its engine. Like, motivation is just the wind. It's great when it's blowing. It pushes you forward effortlessly, which is awesome when you're starting a new semester or your first week in a new job.
That's a great way to look at it.
But you can't rely on the wind if you need to cross the entire ocean. If the wind dies, you're stranded. Discipline is the actual engine in the hull of the ship. But I hear that, and I do have to ask, how does this fit into today's corporate culture? Because we are actively taught to honor our feelings to avoid burnout, right?
Yeah, that's a very common pushback.
Right. So if you are a young professional and you are feeling completely emotionally exhausted, aren't we just begging for a massive breakdown if we ignore that and push through?
That is a crucial distinction to make. And the source actually warns against the trap of toxic positivity or suppression. Suppressing emotion builds pressure, and that inevitably leads to a collapse.
So we aren't supposed to just pretend everything is fine.
Not at all. The trained mind doesn't eliminate emotion, it organizes it. Strong minds separate the emotion from the execution.
How does that look in practice, though?
Well, let's say you are feeling the social anxiety of walking into a massive networking event. You don't pretend the dread doesn't exist. You don't push it down. You feel it, you acknowledge it as information.
Like, oh, I noticed my hands are sweating.
Exactly. You might literally say to yourself, my body is registering stress right now because this is a new environment. And then you move forward anyway. You are not numb to it. You just aren't letting the feeling hold veto power over your physical actions.
Okay, so you feel the resistance, but you don't take orders from it. You acknowledge the dread. But what happens when your physical body is in full revolt? Like when your heart is pounding out of your chest right before giving a presentation, you can't just logic your way out of that, right?
No, you really can't. And that is exactly why the solution cannot start in the brain. The text points out something fascinating here. Panic always starts in the body.
Always in the body first.
Yes, your breathing shortens, your muscles tighten up, your thoughts speed up. And the biggest mistake people make in these moments is trying to think their way out of a physical response.
Oh, like telling yourself to just calm down.
Exactly. They tell themselves to calm down while their nervous system is literally screaming that there is a predator in the room. The source states it very clearly. The mind does not calm the body under pressure. The body calms the mind. You have to work from the outside in.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the text gives a very specific physical grounding technique that you can actually turn into a daily habit, especially when you are just at your desk feeling totally overwhelmed.
It's such a simple but powerful tool.
It says, slow the breath, lower the shoulders, relax the jaw. And I get the breath in the shoulders, but why the jaw specifically? What is the biological mechanism going on there?
It's heavily tied to the vagus nerve and our parasympathetic nervous system. Evolutionarily speaking, when a mammal is under threat and preparing for a physical fight or bracing for an impact, the jaw clenches.
Oh, right, like gritting your teeth.
Exactly. It is a primal, totally hardwired response. So when you consciously relax your jaw, you are essentially reverse engineering the biological signal. You are sending a direct message through your nervous system to your brain that says, I am not bracing for an attack. The environment is safe.
That is wild.
It really is. And only after the body receives that physical signal of safety can the prefrontal cortex, which is the logical part of your brain, actually regain control from the panic center.
Regaining that control is what allows you to find what the source calls the pause. The text argues that reaction is surrender. When you react instantly to a trigger, you are basically handing control of your emotional state over to whatever just triggered you.
Which is such a common trap. Speed under emotion is almost always weakness. Delaying your response creates space.
But people often misunderstand silence and restraint, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. They worry that waiting to respond makes them look frightened or passive, like they're letting someone walk all over them. But in reality, it creates what the text calls quiet authority. When you don't react instantly, the other person or the situation itself just loses momentum.
I want to make this quiet authority real for the listeners. Let's say it is Tuesday at 3 p.m. You are a junior analyst at your first corporate job. Your boss sends a highly critical, slightly passive-aggressive Slack message, and oh no, they copy the entire team.
Oh, the absolute worst.
Right. The immediate burning urge is to type out a massive defensive paragraph instantly, just to prove you aren't stupid.
That is the perfect scenario to look at, because if you fire off that defensive paragraph within 30 seconds, you are showing everyone in that channel exactly what your triggers are.
But letting them see you sweat.
Yes. You are proving that a single message has the power to completely destabilize you. You are operating entirely from defense. But if you practice the daily habit we just discussed, you read the message, you lower your shoulders, you deliberately relax your jaw, and you just let it sit for 20 minutes.
Just let the silence do the work.
Precisely. And when you finally do reply, your response is brief, it's factual, and it is devoid of emotion. You say something like, received, I will adjust the metrics and send the updated file by 4.
Wow, that's such a power move.
It really is. You completely control the frame of that interaction. The boss expected resistance and panic, and instead, they hit a brick wall of calm competence. That is quiet authority.
I love that. So, okay, relaxing the jaw might stop me from snapping at my boss or sending a panicked email to a professor, but what happens when the person criticizing me is, well, me?
That's the real challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, because how does a relaxed jaw stop imposter syndrome? For a lot of students and young professionals, the internal trigger is way, way worse than the external one.
And this is where the training gets really intimate. The source makes a really profound statement about our internal monologue. It says your self-talk is not commentary. It is instruction.
Wait, what does that mean exactly? Commentary versus instruction.
Well, we tend to think our inner voice is just narrating our lives, right? Sort of like a passive sports commentator watching from a booth up above. But it is actually giving direct physiological orders to your nervous system.
Oh, I see. I think of it like a GPS system for your life. Imagine if you took a wrong turn on the highway and your car's GPS just started screaming at you, you missed the turn, you're an idiot, you always mess this up, you shouldn't even have a license.
You would lose your mind.
You'd be so stressed out you would probably crash the car. A good GPS doesn't insult your identity. It simply takes in the new data and calmly says, recalculating, take the next right.
I love that analogy because it highlights the biological sequence perfectly. Untrained self-talk is dramatic, it's emotional, and it attacks your identity.
Give me an example of that.
So, when a student fails a test, the untrained mind says, I'm not built for this. I am an absolute failure. And when you insult your identity like that, your amygdala actually treats your own inner voice like an external predator.
Wait, your brain thinks you are the threat.
Yes. You trigger a threat response against yourself. This floods your system with cortisol and completely exhausts your cognitive load. You are basically wasting the mental energy you desperately need to actually fix the problem.
It really frames training your self-talk as the ultimate practical form of daily self-love and self-respect, doesn't it? Like you have to replace all that dramatic, toxic language with neutral, instructional language.
Absolutely. It's a daily practice of self-love.
Instead of spiraling and saying, I can't deal with this workload, I'm going to get fired, you train the voice to say, handle the next requirement.
Because internal insults do not motivate, they just exhaust you. The mind simply cannot lead itself if it is constantly under attack from within.
So how do we fix that? What's the practical step?
The source suggests a very specific daily habit to rebuild that internal trust. When something goes wrong, say you bomb a presentation or mess up an interview, you have to stop asking, why do I always do this?
Which is everyone's go-to question.
Right, but that question assumes a flaw in your character. Instead, you train yourself to ask, what failed and what can be adjusted?
What failed and what can be adjusted. It completely removes the ego from the equation. It turns the failure into objective data rather than a personal verdict on your worth as a human being.
Exactly. It creates a psychological distance. And when your internal language stabilizes into that neutral analytical tone, your external actions follow naturally. You stop acting out of fear of being exposed as an imposter, and you start acting out of clear instruction.
So what does this all mean for the big picture? Because having a calm inner voice is great. But when you have 20 browser tabs open for a thesis, 5 group chats blowing up, and an inbox full of unread emails, it feels like everything is an emergency.
Chaos is a really fascinating concept in this text. The source argues that chaos is only dangerous when it enters the mind.
Okay, explain that.
Well, a chaotic external environment can actually still be navigated quite effectively by a clear mind. But a perfectly calm environment is completely useless if your mind is scattered. Untrained minds react to an overwhelming volume of work by speeding up. They try to multitask, they consume more information, hoping it will bring clarity, and they fracture their attention.
But in a world of Slack messages, group chats, and constant notifications, isn't slowing down kind of a luxury we just don't have? Like, give me a micro-level example of how the trained mind handles that. When Slack is blowing up and the thesis is due tomorrow, what is the actual mechanism for slowing down?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the mechanism is identifying and dismantling false urgency. We tend to treat every notification, every email, and every task as simultaneous and critical.
Oh, totally. Everything feels like a priority 1 emergency.
And the text explains that treating everything as simultaneous literally overloads your cognitive capacity. You cannot process it. Speed without clarity is actually what causes failure. So the trick isn't to work faster. It is to practice sequential thinking.
Sequential thinking, so doing things in order.
Yes. The trained mind reduces inputs, eliminates noise, and asks one simple question. What is the one thing that matters most right now? Not 5 things, just one.
Once you clarify that single priority, everything else becomes secondary. And secondary doesn't mean irrelevant. It just means not right now.
Exactly. It is about building mental endurance over intensity. We always celebrate the person who pulls the all-nighter, fueled by energy drinks, intensely grinding out a project in a state of high stress.
Yeah, the hustle culture hero.
Right. But the source points out that true endurance isn't about pushing hard briefly when the stakes are incredibly high. True mental endurance is about staying steady when the effort feels entirely unrewarded and absolute boredom sets in.
Because motivation fades. The excitement of the new job wears off by month 3. By the middle of a grueling semester, the novelty is completely gone, the surface distractions disappear, and what remains is just the sheer, terrifying volume of work.
And staying with the work when it is no longer stimulating, that is how mastery actually forms. Untrained minds wait for perfect alignment. They wait to feel rested. They wait to feel inspired. They wait for confidence.
They wait for the wind to blow.
Exactly. But the trained mind moves on a schedule. Schedule beats mood every single time. And this brings us to the real culmination of this mental training. The rarest skill of all, according to the text, is simply showing up regardless of how you feel.
Because consistent attendance eventually forms an identity. If you show up every day, even when you are exhausted, even when the work is tedious and unglamorous, you start to view yourself as a person who is relentlessly reliable.
And as the text emphasizes, identity is always stronger than motivation.
Motivation will abandon you on a rainy Tuesday morning when your alarm goes off at 6 a.m. Identity will put your feet on the floor.
That consistency builds unshakable internal trust. When you trust yourself to follow through on your own instructions, you stop second-guessing every minor decision. You become a steady force. And in an incredibly unpredictable, chaotic professional world, that steadiness is one of the greatest advantages you can possibly possess.
I just love how this entire deep dive flips the script on our anxieties. We started by looking at high-pressure situations, the finals, the interviews, the difficult conversations, as these terrifying threats to our well-being.
Yeah, things to just survive.
Right. But through this framework of mental training, we see them as just repetitions in the mental gym. They're low-stakes opportunities to practice the pause, to lower the shoulders, to relax the jaw, and to execute based on your personal standards instead of your fluctuating feelings.
If you truly master this, if your internal state is entirely independent of external chaos, it leaves you with this lingering thought. Does a high-pressure situation even exist anymore? Or does it just become another Tuesday where you are in complete control? Think about it. We know that humans are incredibly susceptible to emotional contagion. Panic spreads through an office or a classroom like a virus.
Oh, 100%. You can feel it in the air.
But so does calm. If you are the one person in a room who has mastered the pause, who operates with that quiet authority while everyone else is speeding up and panicking, you automatically become the emotional anchor for the entire group.
Wow. The idea that your own internal grounding could literally alter the biology of the people in the room with you, that completely changes how you look at stepping into a chaotic office or joining a tense meeting, doesn't it? It's not just about saving yourself, it is about anchoring the room.
It's a superpower, really.
It really is. Well, thank you all for taking this deep dive with us today. If you found this breakdown helpful, do us a huge favor. Like this video, subscribe for more deep dives, and definitely share this with a friend or a colleague who might be dealing with the pressure of a new job or a tough semester. Until next time, keep your shoulders down, trust your training, and we will see you on the next one.